Greetings, Earthlings. This is the Beyerdynamic M130, a figure 8 ribbon microphone. Ribbon mic! It costs about $1,100 to $1,300. I'm so stupid. If you do want to check it out, I'll throw some links in the description. Full disclosure, this is a loaner mic from Beyerdynamic. All of my recording settings will be listed in the doobly-doo as well as the description. And now let's talk about what comes in the box. Wow, you get a zippered storage case, the microphone, a microphone clip, a 5/8 to 3/8 inch microphone stand adapter, some documentation including measurements of your specific microphone, and some stickers. Then as far as the build quality, this microphone feels fantastic and I have no complaints. It has an all-metal chassis, a metal mesh grille which has no significant give to it. As we move around the mic, there are no buttons or switches. On the bottom, you have the XLR port, and FYI, it is made in Germany. I will not read the specs to you, but I will have them listed in the description as well as have the graphs up on screen, and I'll also include the graphs of my specific microphone in case you want to see that information as well. Now I'm spinning around the M130 to the first 90-degree null area. Continuing around to the rear lobe of sensitivity, this is the back. Does it sound different? Continuing around to the second null dead area, there it is. And then rotating and ending at the front of the mic. Now right here, I would typically include a plosive test, but being that ribbon microphones are a bit more fragile, I don't want to do that because I don't want to break a $1,300 microphone. So if you're using this for vocals or in a situation where there's a lot of gusts of air moving towards the microphone, I highly recommend using a pop filter to avoid potentially damaging the ribbon on this thing. Now I am right on top of the microphone to exaggerate the proximity effect, which is gnarly, and here is how it's sounding. Now about 6 inches off of this thing with it pointed at the corner of my mouth, and here's how it sounds. Now about 1 foot away from the M130, now about 2 feet away from the Beyer M130, and about 4 feet away from the Beyerdynamic M130. Now I'm typing on Gateron blue switches to see how much of that it rejects against my voice. And for the gamers, here are the sad W and spacebar keys. No gamer is buying a figure 8 ribbon, but now you know. Now here is how the M130 sounds about 6 inches off of my mouth in a relatively well-treated room. And now here is how the M130 sounds about 6 inches from my mouth in a completely untreated room. Next, I want to see how effective the microphone and mount are at rejecting shock, so I'll start by tapping on my desk to see how much of that it can reject. And then I'll tap on the boom arm. I probably shouldn't do this, but I'm annoying and I want to be thorough, so I'm going to tap on the microphone to see if there are any kind of resonant frequencies. Now, the reason I really wanted to try out the M130 is because I already own the M160, which I love, and with the figure 8 version of this microphone, now we can get a mid-side recording with 2 Beyerdynamic ribbons, and that is just awesome. So here's a quick demo of that with the M160 as the mid microphone and the M130 as the side microphone. Also, something to note with mid-side miking is it does create an actual stereo field, so you can come across lopsided to the left or the right. So microphone placement is incredibly important, and I just wanted to include a quick demo of what that sounds like.
And now, because I am chaotic evil and I'm absurd, I need to test, will it ASMR? So I will just go ahead and move around this and try not to pop it. Try not to blow any air into the figure 8 microphone. As I move around the microphone, does it have a wide enough stereo field to give you that weird tingly sensation? And also, does the low sensitivity mean that there is just too much hiss to make this viable? Let me know in the comments, did they ASMR?
Now we do quick comparison between M130 and other mic. This give context. Here is the Beyerdynamic M130, 6 inches off of my mouth with my gain set at 53 decibels. Let's hear the first comparison. First, I'm on the Shure SM7b, about 6 inches off with the EQ set to neutral. My input gain is still set at 53 decibels. This microphone costs about $400, and here is how it sounds compared to the M130. Back on the M130, same distance, same gain setting. All mics are connected to the Universal Audio X8. Next mic. Next, I'm on the SE Electronics Voodoo VR2, about 6 inches off with phantom power on and my gain set at 35 decibels. This is an active ribbon, which is why I set my gain at 35 decibels. This microphone costs about $500, and here is how it compares to the M130. This is the Beyerdynamic again to function as a palette cleanser, recording 24-bit 48 kilohertz. Let's hear the next one. Now I'm on the Royer R10, about 6 inches off of this thing. My gain is still set at 53 decibels on the UA X8. Check the lower third to see how much I boost each of these in post. This microphone costs about $600, so about half that of the M130, and here's how it sounds compared to the M130. Here is another palette cleanser on the Beyerdynamic M130. Here is how it sounds. What is the next microphone? Now I am on the Rode NTR, about 6 inches off with 48 volts on and my gain set at 35 decibels. This is another active ribbon, which is how I am able to set my gain so low. This is a very hot ribbon microphone, and this costs about $800. That is the Rode NTR against the Beyer M130. Here is another auditory Q-tip on the Beyerdynamic M130. Nothing has changed. Let's hear another comparison. Next, I'm on one of my all-time favorites, the Beyerdynamic M160, which is a more directional ribbon mic from Beyerdynamic. 6 inches off, gain still set at 53 decibels. This microphone costs about $850 dues. And here is how this sounds compared to its bigger or different brother. I don't know. Its sibling. We have a handful more to go, so this is the M130 again, just so you can hear how this sounds before we jump to another mic. Next, I'm on the Shure KSM313NE, about 6 inches off on the front polar pattern with my gain set at 53 decibels. This microphone costs about $1,430. Hey, I got that right. And here is how the Shure figure 8 ribbon sounds compared to the Beyerdynamic figure 8 ribbon. Which one do you like better? How many of these have I done? Who am I? Where am I? I don't know, but this is the M130. Let's hear another microphone. Next, I'm on the AEA KU5a, aka the AEA KU5a. That was ridiculous. About 6 inches off, gain at 35 decibels, phantom power on because this is another active ribbon. This microphone costs about $1,500. That's a lot of money. But it sounds nice. That's the KU5a against the M130. Here is another palette cleanser on the M130. That's enough talking. Let's hear another microphone. No, I haven't lost my mind. This is a point of reference. I am now on the Shure SM57, about 6 inches off. Gain still set at 53 decibels on the UA-X8. This microphone costs about $100. It's likely the most ubiquitous microphone, so it's a point of comparison for you. That's enough on the SM57. Let's do one more. And we have one more microphone to go, so this is your final palette cleanser on the M130. Let's jump to the last microphone, right? Now I am on the Neumann U87 Ai, cardioid pattern, no pad, no filters on, 48 volts on, gain set at 35 decibels, which is very risky for this microphone. This costs about $3,750 for the studio kit, so this is a fair comparison. Anybody looking for a figure-8 ribbon is thinking, figure-8 ribbon, multi-pattern condenser. That is enough of this comparison. Let's go ahead and move on to the music test. Shut your mind off now, so nothing matters. Just a few minutes, I hope it never ends. Seriously, that is where I've been, just stressed out all the time, and where's the world where I don't have to care about anything? Where's that world? I want to live there, please and thank you. Let's move on with the video. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are now in the conclusion, but I want to do some more testing, so we are going to EQ the M130. I'm running it through the UA LA610. We have plus 10 on gain and almost 100% on the level. At 7 kilohertz, we're going to bump this up 1.5 dB. That is 1.5 dB. We'll bump it up again to 3 decibels. This is 3 decibels at 7 kilohertz. And then in the low end at 200 hertz, we're going to decrease this by 1.5 dB. That is 1.5 dB. And then reduce it again, 3 decibels at 200 hertz. That is 3 decibels at 200 hertz reduced. And that EQ is going to stay on the rest of the video. So now it is officially conclusion time. And this is another one of those super duper extra thick microphones. I can hear everybody whistling at it from outdoors. Anyway, let's start with the pros, and number one is one of the primary reasons you would be getting a ribbon microphone. It just offers such a smooth and soft sound that is pretty much unique to ribbon microphones, and that is one of the main draws to them. Secondly, this is a figure-8 ribbon microphone, which means the 90-degree off-axis rejection is insane. It's some of the best rejection you're going to get. So if rejection is essential, A figure eight like this is going to do you a lot of favors if you can use that pattern, that null area, to your advantage. But then we get to the cons, like my air conditioning just turning on, and I'm not going to shut it off. Don't you dare ask me. But number one is the low end on this thing can become quite overpowering. If you're close miking something, it can be too much. If you are recording a really bassy sound signature, it can be too much. It can be a pro depending on what you want your microphone to do, but I need to point that out. This thing has a lot of bass and low mids. Also, the shock rejection of the microphone and the mount are not the greatest. And lastly, this is more of an FYI. If you're looking at this mic, you already know it. It is a passive ribbon microphone, and like pretty much every passive ribbon microphone, the sensitivity is extremely low. So if you have a noisy preamp, that may become an issue. Caveat for all of those out there who are looking for a nit to pick when I say it may be an issue, if you are not recording extremely loud sound sources. There you go. Caveat done. And now, what are my overall thoughts and opinions of the Beyerdynamic M130? As far as the overall sound, I would classify this as a very warm microphone, as well as a somewhat dark microphone. In the bass and low mids, this thing is incredibly robust, very deep, and sometimes it can be overpowering. For pretty much every application I use it for, I found myself wanting to throw on a high pass filter and clean up a little bit between 100 and 200 hertz. Like I mentioned, the low mids do have a little bit of a push to them, but when you get to the upper mids, it is more neutral. And then in the treble and air frequencies, it rolls those off, gives you that softer, more classic vintage ribbon sound, and it also comes across a little bit on the darker side. On the electric guitar with this microphone raw, I do think that the low end can be a little bit overpowering and a little bit muddy, but I found that once I cleaned that up, it sounded awesome, especially if you're trying to tame a bit of gnarliness in the upper frequencies of your guitar. It really softens that up. But if you're looking for this hyper detailed aggressive sound, this is not really offering that. On the electric guitar, I have used this descriptor before, but I'm bringing it back. I think this sounds earthy. It is deep, it is dark, it is rich, just earthy. The low end can be overpowering, but once you clean that up, you are left with this very vintagey, soft, smooth upper end. It's not super aggressive. The articulation off the strings is not hyper detailed. It is giving you that softer, smoothed out upper end if that's the sound you're looking for. For singing, it is the exact same story. The low end can be quite overpowering if the microphone is raw, but once that's cleaned up, it's giving you that softer, more vintagey sound, and I think it can work really well. I think it gives kind of this intimate sound. If you're looking for that modern, hyper-detailed, super bright sound, you shouldn't be looking at a ribbon because you're not going to at least get it out of this one. It's not giving you that. Vintage ribbon sounds, yes, for vocals, singing vocals. And finally, for spoken word, this would not be my first choice for that application, and it would also not be my first ribbon choice for that application. I just think the low end is a bit much, and also it's a figure eight. In my environment, that's not typically the polar pattern that I go for, but if you have this microphone and you want to do or are able to do a little bit of EQ to clean up that low end, I think you can get some very usable sounds if you want a little bit of a darker, softer, more vintagey sound. All right, and to wrap up, would I recommend the Beyerdynamic M130 figure 8 ribbon microphone? That is a solid kind of, and then yes. If you are going to be close miking something, or if you are concerned about your microphone having too much low end without having to EQ it, chances are this isn't going to be the best fit for you. But if you do have a thinner sound source and you're looking for a microphone that does a lot of heavy lifting to beefing it up, This does that very well in the bass and low mid frequencies. However, with that being said, I found that the Rode NTR sounded similar to this. The Rode is about $800. It also has active electronics, so it's going to be less of a concern with your preamp noise. But, or double but, there is a significant difference in size and weight between the two microphones, so if you need a ribbon microphone with that sound character and a small form factor, it is an obvious choice for the M130. But if that's not a concern, I think the NTR gets you pretty close. To be even more of a stickler, if I was looking at Beyerdynamic ribbons, the M130 would not be my first choice. My first choice would be the M160. I still prefer the sound of this microphone over the M130 for all of the applications that I use it for. But if you're willing to entertain me and allow me to do one more, however, I will explain why this is a yes. If you are looking to do mid-side miking with ribbon microphones and get that classic vintagey soft sound from a ribbon, but you have that stereo element from mid-side miking, I don't know if there is a better pair between the M160 as your mid and the M130 as your side. There is even a mount that people made for that because it sounds so good. It sounds awesome. I had to record a tryout on the acoustic. What did I use? These two microphones in mid-side. It sounds awesome. So that's where it's a resounding yes. If you have the M160 and you want a Beyerdynamic mid-side mic set, bro, it's so good. It sounds so good. It's awesome. Okay, that's going to wrap up this video. Sorry I have been gone so long. I have just been swamped with life, work. It has just been draining every ounce of my life force out of me. I'm gonna try to get back to making videos regularly, but it's probably gonna be a bit intermittent for the time being. I am very sorry about that. If you're still subscribed, if you're watching this, I really do appreciate you. And thank you to all the members who have continued to support the channel. I will see ya when I have another video for you. Love ya. Bye-bye. Whoa, whoa.